Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am delighted to welcome a very senior professional talking to us today from Iowa, USA, Mr. Jacob Hicks. Jacob, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you. Jacob is a success coach and a speaker. So, Jacob, let me start with my first question. What inspired you to transition from a successful sales career into coaching and speaking?
Well, it's kind of an interesting journey as, most of these things tend to go. I spent, 12 years in sales, but I realized, well, I guess first I should say that I've always been really interested in bettering myself in whatever kind of way that looks, whether it be professionally or just finding new and better ways to do things. Self-care, like figuring out just how to do myself better has always been a big key for me. And I about a year and a half ago now, a local coach of mine, I reached out to him to see if getting coaching personally myself made sense, just to again get me to that next level to help me do things better, more efficiently. And during the course of our first conversation, he said, listen, Jacob, we can definitely do coaching for you. I said, I think that's no problem at all, but I think you should be a coach and be a speaker.
Mm,
And in reflection, I've realized that in gosh, most of my life, I was always kind of the guy that my friends always came to. If they
mm,
had they're thinking about maybe transitioning in their career, interviewing for a new job, maybe starting a business of their own, or just pursuing some of those things.
mhm,
I was always the guy they came to. And I realized that even in my professional career, in my sales career, coaching was always kind of a piece of it. Like I was never the guy that was like a slammer, what we call it, where like they were pushing super hard on the sales, really, really driving into people. I always wanted to be the consultant, the guy that helped them navigate difficult or murky situation and help them kind of reach the goals that they were driving towards. And I've realized that, I mean, coaching and speaking, that's always it's really kind of a niche for me. It's a kind of a sweet spot where I can help people really drive towards their goals and also find that future vision,
mm.
then it still allows me to, build something of my own. So it's been a lot of fun so far.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you for sharing your journey. And how did your experience in sales influence your ability to connect with and empower your clients?
Well, I mean, I guess the easy kind of answers, and a lot of your listeners might expect this being a sales guy, that I don't have a lot of fear and shame, I guess, when it comes to reaching out to folks. I mean, I think if there's some way that I can connect with somebody, either for, like, hey, I think coaching could make sense for you potentially, or just like, hey, I think that it makes sense to add each other to our networks. I'm usually going to reach out and make that connection. So I'm not afraid to ask. And if the answer is no, I mean, and we get a lot of no's in sales, as people know. And so that doesn't really hurt my feelings. It's like, okay, we can part as friends, and, best of luck to you in your endeavors.
Yeah.
But then it also, I mean, a lot of the folks that I work with, either as true salespeople, entrepreneurs, even a lot of nonprofits that I'm working with now, um, they, I mean, as a lot of folks, they struggle to build the sales systems in such a way that will allow them to really drive over the long term. Meaning that most folks, when they meet somebody at a networking event or connect with them on LinkedIn or whatever the case might be, and thinks maybe some business could make sense at some point, if they don't hear anything in one or two attempts, then they assume, oh well, I don't want to bug that person. That person clearly isn't interested. And I almost at 80% of the time, studies have shown 80% of the time that's not the case. Most businesses one in five or more follow-ups.
Mm.
So most people just don't have that plan in place and have the right mindset to drive around those things. So that's a lot of what we work on. It's been really great.
Well said. And Jacob, as you reflect on your own personal growth journey, was there a turning point that significantly changed your coaching philosophy?
So I mean, I guess there's been a couple of points. So this was, oh gosh, probably 10, maybe 12 years ago now.
Mm,
So I was kind of a new guy, just kind of getting into sales. And I was working retail at the time. And for anybody that's ever worked retail or any of that kind of like very, service driven kind of industry where you're very, very customer facing,
mm.
knows that you can meet a lot of really great people, work with a lot of great people,
Yeah.
but there are also some more difficult folks that will come into your world. And I realized that, well, I question started asking myself when I was dealing with a particularly difficult customer, was, is this a story that I'm going to tell? Meaning that they might be really, really difficult in the day, right? In that moment. But is this a story that I'm going to tell? And sometimes they might be a story that maybe I tell, my friends or whatever later on that same evening.
Mm,
But then I would ask myself, okay, is this a story that I'm going to tell in a week? Is
mm,
this a story that I'm going to tell in a month or in a year? And 99.9% of the time, the answer was no. And I don't
mm,
even remember what they are, let alone be able to tell that story.
mm,
So that was kind of the first thing that really kind of stepped me on this path. The second thing is, I mean, a few years ago now, I realized that I believe that success is really defined by just your willingness to continue.
mm,
Meaning that if you, I mean, in entrepreneurship, especially in sales too, like there's going to be days where you're just, on the cloud nine, you're on top of the world,
yeah.
and there's going to be really low valleys too, where you're really, really struggling.
Mm,
And I've realized that, yeah, it really, I mean, grit's, I guess, the easiest way to say it, but it's just like, all right, how willing are you to continue?
mm,
And if you are willing to continue, if you're willing to keep going no matter what, and that doesn't necessarily mean that like make bad decisions, go into a whole bunch of debt, like really struggle with those things.
yeah.
But it could be like, okay, my business isn't doing as well as I'd hoped right away or in this season, so maybe I need to take a small step back and maybe I need to find some part-time work or something like that, but something that just allows you to keep the dream going. And like I said, that grit, I really think just defines how successful you will be in your business and in life in general.
Mm. Great response. Jacob, your core professional goal is to help clients lead complete, fulfilling lives. For my viewers and listeners, and for me, how do you define a full, complete life?
So, I mean, I don't know if this will be a great answer or not, but the true answer is it depends.
Mm,
So um, when I work with people right away, the first homework that we do together is a task I call the interview.
mhm,
And this is where I put my client in a mindset of 5 years out from today. What does your ideal life look like? Like, what does an ideal life, like, a day look like for you? What does your home look like? Like some of those things, because most folks that, at least the folks that I've encountered, they have these goals, right? The professional, the personal goals
yeah.
where they say, hey, I want to hit quota. Hey, I want to grow my business. Hey, I want to have a better, home life or a closer relationship with my family, whatever the case might be. Those are fantastic things, right? But they don't put themselves out and okay, in 5 years from now, what does this really look like?
Mm,
Because their vision is too small.
yeah.
So when I say a full and complete life, I guess again, it depends, and it can be very, very seasonal. Meaning that when you, again, for example, if you start a business, you're going to have a season, or you'll very likely have a season when you first start it, where
Mm,
you're going to have to rise and grind. Like no
mm,
matter how successful you are, you're going to have to show up and put in those 10, 12, maybe 15-hour days, 5, 6 days, 7 days a week. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. But
mm.
again, that's a very, very seasonal
Correct. I
thing
agree. I
and
agree.
understanding that.
But a great
Yeah. So
response. Mm,
yes, it really kind of depends.
absolutely. Thank you. And Jacob, what role does mindset play in your coaching approach, and how can a shift in mindset ensure sustainable success?
So, I mean, mindset, I mean, that's a big question, right? And a lot of folks talk about this ad nauseum. When it comes to mindset, I mean, there's kind of a few different things, and it really kind of comes down to your perspective.
Yeah.
So the question or the question I mentioned earlier that I asked myself early on in my sales career was like, is this a story that I'm going to tell?
Mm,
So like if you come across somebody like, if is this a story I'm going to tell? That's a mindset shift, meaning that yeah, this person is not treating me well right now in this moment, but over the course of my day, my life, in the next following weeks, like it's not really going to matter. Now, when it comes to sustainable success, that's, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said before, where you have to be driven, you have to be almost maybe a little arrogant in what you're believing in yourself,
mhm,
but you also have to be realistic. Meaning that, okay, like I said, maybe my business isn't doing quite as well as I'd hoped right away or right now in this season. So I take a step back. Maybe I do full-time or part-time work
mm,
just to help me get through this lull. And then we get back to it at full gas once things are a little more leveled off.
mm. Well said. And what common patterns or behaviors have you observed among clients who achieve lasting success versus those who keep struggling?
So it kind of comes down to two things. First, I've mentioned already, and it's that grit piece. It's
Mm,
just that willingness to continue no matter what.
yeah.
The second piece is was one of my favorite sayings. I call it ABE, ABE, always be experimenting.
Hmm.
And you have to do enough experimentation and gain enough data to see what's actually working.
Yeah.
Meaning that a lot of the times when, especially like in sales, for example, people will say they will try a new verbiage, or they will try maybe a new strategy.
Mm.
They'll do it once or twice. Maybe they'll see results, maybe they won't, but that's really not enough data to really know one way or the other. So we
Mm.
have to do enough to really get an understanding of what's working for us.
Mm.
So I want people to always be experimenting. So let's say you find one or two things that are working, so you double down on those, but then you take 10, 20-ish% of your time or your efforts, and you dedicate that to trying new things, whether that be
Mm.
social media posts, whether that be some new business strategies, some new sales strategies. So always be experimenting, always be trying something new.
Mm. That's it. And how do you emphasize balance and avoiding burnout as a key to sustained success? And how do you help your clients or coachees to integrate this balance?
So again, balance. I mean, I think like for a long time, and I'm sure you've heard this again ad nauseum, but you always talk about the work-life balance, right? Where hey, I want to work, 9 to 5, then I want to be done, and I want to leave everything at work, and I want to do nothing at home, right? So you really have to understand when it comes to balance, like what I believe it comes down to intentionality. Meaning, like the phrase I've heard a ton in my professional and my sales career was work hard, play hard,
Mm.
and I think it's a piece maybe, but I really changed that much more into intentionality, where we have to work
Mm.
intentionally, we need to play intentionally, and I think the piece that we can really miss is we have to rest intentionally.
Mm.
Meaning that again, for like my prior example where I talked about entrepreneurs that maybe they start their business and they need to work that 10, 12, 15-hour days
Mm.
consistently, right?
Mm.
If you are doing that, you need to understand that it's for a season and try to have some sort of idea of when that season might end. And then you also need to be very intentional with how you are playing and how you are resting.
Mm.
I mean, if you're working that 15-hour day and you're absolutely exhausted and you have nothing left in the tank, then maybe that means that, sure, you can do that for 5 or 6 days in a row. But maybe you need to be intentional and say, okay, this next Sunday, this next Monday, I'm taking that day fully off and I need to rest so that I can show up again. I'm not actually burning myself out over the long
Mm.
term.
Mm. Well said. Jacob, when I was reading about you, I was fascinated to see that, you describe your follow-up systems as strong and impactful. What does an effective follow-up system look like?
So really what it comes down to is well, first it's having one. Most people's like the stats that I've seen is
Mm.
that one out of every two business people don't follow up more than once.
Correct.
And if we understand that 80% of businesses one in five or more follow-ups, then we're leaving 80% of our business on the table.
Mm.
So first is we need to have one, meaning you meet somebody at a networking event, you hit it off, you get their contact information. You have to know what your next steps are. Like, are you giving them a call the next day? Are you waiting a couple of days? Are you emailing them? Like, are you just evaluating to see if, hey, maybe this really does this make sense? Now, the next piece is having that long-term strategy.
Mm.
So I talk about a 10 by 10, meaning that you're reaching out to somebody 10 times over 10 weeks just to warm them up a little bit. And then I also talk about what I call a 36 touch,
Mhm.
where over the course of 12 months, you're reaching out in various forms, mostly email, in various forms, 36 individual times. Again, make sure that you are staying in front of mind. So
Mm.
having those systems in place. And then the other key piece of this is making sure that you're not doing it from a spreadsheet. That
Right.
can be an okay place to start. But if
Mm.
you're doing it from a spreadsheet as you scale from, I mean, anything more than probably 10 or 20 clients or potential clients, it's going to become really burdensome and you're not going to use it effectively. So having a customer relationship manager of some sort is really critical here.
Mm. Amazing. And what practical advice would you offer someone struggling with consistency in implementing new strategies?
So the the example that I like to give is from my personal life when I was learning to play piano.
Mm.
So this kind of comes back to that mindset piece that we mentioned before, and we can often fall into the trap of what I call the New Year's Eve revolution mindset, meaning over the last 3 4 5 months I've never worked out, but January 1 I'm hitting the gym hard, I'm going 5 days a week, I'm changing my diet, I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's 0 to 60 immediately, and we can't do it. So if you're struggling with consistency, start smaller, meaning that, again, back to my piano example, if you are trying to learn piano and you say you want to practice maybe 15 minutes a day, not very much, or you start practicing 15 minutes a day, and you're excited about it. 15 minutes doesn't feel like anything. I suggest starting smaller.
Mm,
So maybe 15 minutes is manageable for you when you're excited. So maybe we start with 10 minutes a day and we start building that consistency muscle.
mm.
So if you're struggling to implement things consistently, then start a little bit smaller, build something that you can do consistently, and then start adding to it until you get to the goal you actually want to achieve on a daily basis.
Great tip. Thank you. Um, in your mastermind groups, what practices or structures have you found most effective to encourage openness and accountability?
So the openness piece, that's kind of where we do a lot of focusing. So whenever I'm doing a true mastermind, working with like a larger group more than like just a one-on-one that I do a lot of my coaching with,
Mm,
when I'm doing those larger groups, then I always start with myself, meaning that if we are focusing on, for example, let's say we're focusing on purpose
mm,
and we're asking some maybe harder, some maybe more uncomfortable questions, then I really honestly like even though I'm leading and facilitating, I still consider myself a member of this particular group.
mm,
So when I'm asking those questions, then I will answer them. And I'll usually answer them first, and I'll try to answer them as honestly and as vulnerable as I can, so that
mm,
people feel again more comfortable doing so themselves. And then when we're driving that accountability piece, it's really understanding. So accountability, people can run away from it saying like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to be held accountable to things,"
mm,
right?
mm,
But it's really understanding like, "Hey, did you hit the mark that we established?
mm.
If yes, then why? And if no, then why?" And just understanding those things in a very honest way so that maybe the next time we can hit things a little bit better, a little more honestly.
Amazing. What is the most common challenge participants face in your mastermind groups, and how do you help them overcome it?
So I mean, I would honestly say that the biggest challenge that people face in my mastermind groups, but then also just in coaching and maybe life in general is the clarity piece. And we kind
Mm,
of mentioned it earlier. Clarity, I think it really allows you to understand where you're going and why you're going there.
mm,
And that's why I always start my one-on-one coaching clients with the interview because that will allow them to gain that clarity. It's like, okay, so what does my ideal day really look like? Like,
mm.
does it mean like working a whole bunch of hours? And it could be like that's okay.
Yeah.
If that's what you love, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. For a lot of the folks I've worked with, it means maybe not working quite as much, building a business or a career that they truly love,
Mm,
and then being able to spend time with their family. So having that kind of clarity in the mastermind group and one-on-one coaching and just and again in your life in general is absolutely critical.
right. Well said. I have time for two more questions for you.
Yes.
How do you balance individual attention with the collective needs of a mastermind group?
So that's always kind of the big differentiator here. So in my one-on-one coaching, that's when I again dig in with somebody really aggressively, saying like, okay, here's what we really want, here's the vision we're driving towards, here's the day-to-day work that we're doing, and really understanding what is it that's driving them.
Hmm.
In the mastermind groups, it's much more structured,
Hmm.
saying that like, okay, here's your assigned readings for the day, or go read this article or watch this video. Then
Hmm.
here's two or three reflection kind of questions in our
Hmm.
group discussions to kind of put some thought behind, and then we can discuss it as a group.
Hmm.
So usually, what I'll do is in the mastermind groups is if somebody is really struggling with something, then usually I'll take them aside and offer them
Hmm.
maybe like half an hour or maybe an hour, depending on what's going on, just to say like, okay, here's some of our struggles
Hmm.
and here's how we can drive towards them. Because again,
Right.
like that's really the balance, and you can't always get one and the other too.
Hmm. Well said. And my last question to you, Jacob, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation. Most of them are young and under 34.
Mm.
What would you say are three lessons for young aspiring leaders to help them build a foundation for future success?
So, I was really thinking about this question for quite a while. My first one, I don't know if this will be a popular take or not, but I strongly suggest that everybody at least study sales. And that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you have to go out and be, a world-class salesperson that's handling objections and building all these systems and all this stuff.
Hmm.
But I'm a really big believer that sales is everywhere. Whether or not you're a commission-driven, incentive-driven person, if you're still in that 9 to 5 W-2 kind of work where you're just making your typical salary, you
Hmm.
are still selling, I believe, where you are talking about different
Yeah.
ideas. And the other piece of this too is that most of us are going to have more than one job in our life, right?
Hmm.
So if you are interviewing at any point, I believe that is a true sales experience
Correct.
where not only are you selling yourself to the potential company or
Mm.
employer or whatever, but they are also selling themselves to you. So you
Yeah.
have to ask, like, am I a good fit for this job? And they have to show that they're going to be a good employer and good facilitator of your time.
Mm.
I would also really, again, strongly suggest people be experimenting.
Mm.
Always be trying different. And again, this doesn't have to be like I'm building a brand new business. It can be, but it can be like, gosh, I'm feeling, exhausted and burnt out. And then maybe examining, okay, well, what does my home life look like? Am I, cultivating hobbies and like doing these kind of things, spending time with my friends? Always be experimenting.
Mm.
And the last thing, again, I'm sure you've said this before on your show, but is to always be learning, is to
Mm.
be trying new things and understanding that the learning is a lifelong pursuit, even after we're well past university and any kind of degrees you might be attaining.
Mm. Amazing. And on that note, and your three incredible lessons, study sales, which is so important because we are constantly selling either our product or even our own brand. Second, you said was always keep experimenting. And the third you said was always be alert.
Mm.
And of course, your amazing lesson of APE, which is always be experimenting. Thank you, Jacob, for speaking to me about your own journey. I think we covered some very interesting ground on sales and on coaching. Uh, you helped us understand what is a full, complete life. You spoke to us about success versus those who struggle. You spoke to me about burnout. We also spoke about follow-up systems and how critical they are to be able to build a consistent presentation of ourselves to in our own lives, in our families, and in the work that we do. And then you spoke to me about your mastermind groups. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.